Welcome back to the Catalyst Corner. I'm Cedric Scott Jr. And today I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things related to education, technology, and even some hiring related components that I've been looking into recently. So, first thing, thinking about education and state of the job market in particular for a lot of folks in the education and ed tech spaces, including transitioning teachers and even some of the people who are doing some of the more technical roles, UX, UI, those types of things. One thing I thought was kind of interesting recently, as a lot of people may have come across, is um, basically a notification about the ESSER funding ending. If you're not familiar with that, it was more so basically happening during the pandemic, where we were seeing a lot more funds being put in place to support and kind of uphold school settings and educational initiatives through ESSER. So with that, basically those things are coming to an end, like the actual funds, which means that there's not necessarily the same amount of money available. So I've been kind of curious to monitor and see what happens with honestly hiring and kind of the onboarding of not necessarily just different people for roles, but also the application and purchase of different tools. So I know that there's a lot of ed tech resources, a lot of companies who are preparing and producing solutions for different issues, concerns, disparities within classrooms and schools and districts and even some of the alternative learning spaces. But with those funds not necessarily being readily available anymore, it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. I think from my lens, working more so in the education or edtech industry side of things, not necessarily so much in directly in the system anymore, is that we're definitely seeing things slow down, which ultimately means for a lot of companies or organizations potentially is that hiring could slow down for them, because with that the schools and districts that they may serve, are not necessarily able to purchase more, which would decrease the demand for actually, having people to support in whatever role or capacity that might look like at the company. So, roles and responsibilities and companies within these teams, could either stay pretty stagnant where they are, and hopefully not decrease, but there's always kind of the potential with that, especially when we're talking about, I think, with tech companies and a lot of the layoffs we've seen in the past few years. So now it's kind of consideration for the education space. So that was one kind of interesting implication, because I know that there are a lot of educators I've personally supported, either through my kind of coaching efforts, just even in conversations, DM chats and stuff like that, who are in the market, in the current job market, and the current job market is not like anything that I feel like I've personally ever seen, for sure. It's definitely different from when I made my pivot out of the school system back in 2020. So yeah, definitely keeping an eye on that. And if anybody does need support, any potential way, you can reach out. Again, for me, you can always go to my website, cedricscott.com, for all the stuff that I do, but particularly thinking about supports for educators and career guidance. You can go to eduhustle.co, eduhustle.co, which is kind of cool because we have some different initiatives happening there. Of course, I offer different things, resources, services, but I've also started a kind of like a consulting advisory firm, if you will, where there's been some great, I think, some great movement in some different areas, and some awesome people that I've been able to support in their career journeys in different capacities, who have made the pivot, made the shift, or doing something different now. And with that, I've been able to kind of, pull these people in and kind of put everybody's brains together to where now, if you're an educator looking for a new opportunity, you don't have to pay thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars for a coaching call or anything like that. For a reasonable price, you can, set up a call with, I think we have 6 current consultants there that are basically folks who have made the shift during the current climate of the job market. and they're offering advice, support, and sharing any resources that they can. So you can book a call with any of them, just kind of based on their calendar and what's available. So go ahead and check that out. Um, Another thing I wanted to really dig into a little bit more is the big tech topic right now, which is AI. And I'll probably talk a lot about this at different points, in uh, different episodes of the podcast going forward. But definitely what's happening right now in the space is really interesting and intriguing. I think it's really important. Number one, for folks to get exposure and just to gain knowledge and get more than that, going into actually getting some experience and using some of the tools that are available. I know a lot of people are, have been tinkering with ChatGPT or using it, pretty consistently since they launched. I actually just joined the call last night. Well, as of I'm sharing this particular episode which is August 1st today. So July 31st, I joined the call. It's kind of a community town hall feedback conversation around Chat Black GPT, which was created by Aaron Riddick and an awesome team over there. So there's a lot of nuanced components to AI to support in different ways, right? Like to combat disparities, uh, deal with bias, which is really cool. And a lot of people, in the business space, definitely have been already kind of leveraging some of this and using it for more efficient strategies and practices and email responses and all those things. So there's definitely something to be said about that. The one thing I'm leaning into more so is ensuring that folks who might not be as tech savvy, if that would be I guess the way that I've heard it phrased, or comfortable with technology, or even just interested in it or open to it, um, is exploring ways to bring people in to basically show how it can help you, and also warn about the downsides, because we know that these tools and these resources, the technology is not perfect. We know that it can't do everything, but it is important to make sure that there are access points, and that includes for our youth as well. And just thinking about that, even the most recent winner of my scholarship, which I award every year for students going into STEM degrees, was a young woman, is a young woman rather, who is planning to go into computer science because she wants to work on combating bias in AI, right? Based on issues and concerns and reports dealing with facial recognition software, right? So she wants to address that, which amazing. So I think that there's definitely a place for everybody, within that space to begin leveraging. Even with my 4-year-old son, and we've begun using the voice command components of these tools and talking to it and creating stories and crafting images based on his interests and things like that. So all things said, there are benefits, there are upsides, but we have to be conscious and cognizant, and also kind of forthcoming about the other components of it, right? The other potential downsides. One interesting thing that I recently saw, I wanted to address and bring up, just out here in the sphere, if nobody else has seen it, or when you come across it, you heard it here first. But there was actually a commercial for the Olympics, or during the Olympics rather. It was a father who talked about how his daughter was a runner, and she essentially kind of really looked up to one of the athletes. So what he did was have AI support. I don't know at what length, if it wrote the entire thing. I don't know if it tells the whole story just in the commercial, but basically get AI to support in writing a a letter, essentially, kind of an appreciation letter from the daughter to the athlete. And I've heard a lot of questions raised around it. Is that right? Should they have just sat down and actually gone through the process of writing that that letter, right? With having that particular young lady go through, actually do the process of writing it out, writing the letter, producing it, revising it, what have you, kind of like the writing process that we all kind of I'm sure have gone through in school, versus leaning on AI. So I guess the question then becomes, at, at what point is there too much reliance on the tool versus us using human intelligence versus artificial? So that's up in the air in terms of feelings about it. For me, I'm just reporting as far as thoughts and the actual kind of fact of what was shown in the commercial. I mean, albeit there are going to be use cases, of course, for situations like that. So the way I view it is there is most likely more to that story. But I think the idea behind the commercial was basically to kind of portray the capabilities and how far the AI tools can extend in supporting and really make tie-ins and direct connections and correlations to our everyday lives and the things that we enjoy, the things that we have interest in. And I wouldn't necessarily beat up on a parent or anything like that related to that, but I do see where the questions could come in of like, all right, well, what about sitting down and writing this out? Because that could also be a great experience, as a parent with a child and going through that process. And then also, the pride behind, sending it and maybe getting a response and striking up a conversation, and who knows what that could do. But ultimately, if we're looking at the benefit of the future for our children, I think that the exposure is important. We need to get engaged, have experience, and also for adults who may either not necessarily be as comfortable or be usually kind of kept in the dark about a lot of this stuff. There are a lot of times where we can talk about how folks in marginalized communities, different situations where access to technology is a problem, resources, all these different things that are common, especially when we talk about education, but not necessarily put to the forefront and actually considered as far as, okay, well, what about the solutions? We'll hear about all the problems, but how do we rectify it? How do we fix that? And part of that for sure, especially for me, working and supporting more so recently since the pandemic in kind of the homeschool sector, alternative learning spaces, where there is a little bit more autonomy and choice as far as the tools that are used, implementation, what that looks like, even breaking down kind of the daily schedule and how the flow of learning happens. That we have a great leverage there for a lot of these resources, for the use cases to be explored, because there's not the same parameters that you might have in we'll say a public school context. So there, I'm definitely seeing a lot of growth, development, as I'm sharing things that I've produced, chatbots and stuff like that. Even some of the content in the educational materials with melanated mathematics, for example, where people are accessing the resources and beginning to get engaged and explore, and then get to a point where the question is, all right, well, what's next? Right? Where do I go? How do I create something within this space? Which is an amazing thing. It's beautiful. And I think that there should be more growth and expansion there. I would like to see an exponential kind of impact happen in continuation of that growth. But I think we'll kind of have to see what happens, but also be very active and not stand on the sidelines and wait, but really be in the game and also just be very mindful, keep our heads on the swivel and pay attention to what's going on around us as we're also working. So just a few things I wanted to tap into. Definitely want to hear other people's thoughts. Always interested in engaging in conversations uh, any type of forums or whatever the case is related to educational topics, technology, even talking about life and parenting and family, which is always amazing. Being a father and a husband. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. Thank you for joining me on the Catalyst Corner, and I hope to catch you next time. Peace.